Hello, I'm Bradley Alicea. I'm the head scientist and founder of Orthogonal Research and Education Lab. And I'm going to talk to you today about a project that we're sort of a formative project we're working on called a collective cognition model for ethical and sustainable open source. And so this is the Orthogonal Research and Education Laboratory. We're on the web, we're on social media, and we have a value of global and virtual connectivity. So if you're anywhere in the world, you can collaborate with us and participate in research. So, what is ethical open source? So, open source projects and organizations, and many of those you may be familiar with. These are like the Linux Foundation and some of the other foundations around the web, the Mozilla Foundation. They produce open source software. And some of these organizations are very big and some of them are very small. Despite their size, they rely upon contributors to maintain and sustain open software. So some of the bigger projects have solved the problem that I'm going to discuss with you, but a lot of the smaller organizations do not. And so that's where we're sort of aiming we're training our research chops to understand that. But also, for bigger organizations, this is useful because oftentimes they have a lot of people working on projects to maintain them, but it's very hard to get the mix of things right. So the recent security breaches in a lot of open source software have led to befuddlement by a lot of these organizations in terms of how they can keep up with the latest issues in security and other maintenance issues. So this is useful in a number of ways if you decide to work on this project. And two of the questions we're asking in this project are: how do you maintain a thriving community? So these open source organizations rely upon a community of contributors while keeping the community emergent and decentralized. We want to utilize computational models and simulation to provide a greater understanding of this process and how these social dynamics are maintained and can thrive. And then the second question is, can we identify some of these modes of regulation that might be reinforced within community standards and rules? So what can we do in terms of shaping that community that will improve its performance, improve its responsiveness, and so forth. So one of the ways we seek to do this, and this is, I'll get to at the end, I'll get to how this program is structured, or this research project is structured. The first solution are these homeostatic systems for open source sustainability. And so there are a number of ways that we can approach this. We've thought of approaching it through more of a cybernetical approach. So this is in the form of time-dependent block diagrams with arrows showing the relationships, the causal relationships, and the feedback relationships. So you can see on the right you have this black box, and then it goes to a white box, and then it goes to a gray box. And if you join our group, you'll understand what those relationships are and what the meaning of those colors are. And we can build these models that sort of represent things in the system, in social systems, but also in the technological system. And, we'll be able to implement this in code, hopefully, and then calibrate it with agent-based models, or real-world data. But it's hard to collect real-world data, so for now we'll be concentrating on agent-based models. The second way to do this is to use an approach like reinforcement learning. And so reinforcement learning is similar to this. You have policies that are selected, and that we have behaviors that there's a feedback when you perform a certain behavior in a certain environment, and that behavior is sort of reinforced or it's discarded. And so that reinforcement learning approach is also very good for this. We want to find the best set of incentives in the reward structure of an RL algorithm. So we want to find social incentives, we want to find technological incentives. Another area you might look into if you're interested in this project is the ethical regulator. And this is sort of the inspiration for the work that we're doing. Something called the Evergood Regulator Theorem, which is something out of cybernetics. It goes back to the 1970s with Conant and Ashby. And it's basically the structure on the lower right where you have this variable and you have two parameters, S and R, and those are mapped to the space where you have G that fits inside of Z. And so G is the thing that you're trying to regulate, and Z is the thing that you're regulating. So this is your ability to regulate it. Z and G is the thing that you're trying to regulate. The idea is we want to have a good account of every possible state to be able to understand how to control G. So, for example, if you want to enforce good, virtuous behaviors, you have to understand the range of behaviors and the range of motivations that people engage in your community. It's not easy, but we might be able to do it if we have enough understanding of the system. So, in the ethical regulator, this is this sort of idea of every good regulator but applied to ethics. And so up here on the top right, you can see this ethical regulator. There are a number of different aspects to it: purpose, ethics, truth, variety, predictability, variety being all the different states of a system. And this goes into an intelligence. And of course, these are black boxes. We can unpack these black boxes in the project if you would wish to do that. If not, we can still understand the relationships between these things. This leads to an ethically regulated system, and then a feedback to the ethical regulator in terms of awareness. So there are things like predicting future effects of actions, outcomes, a variety of possible actions, intelligence, choosing best actions, and ethics and truth. And so we want to do agent-based modeling to reinforce some of these things and find out more about what hypothetical communities might do. We can use a number of things in the NetLogo modeling software. There are a number of stock simulations that one can use: the tragedy of the commons, ethnocentrism, cooperation, and altruism. Those all come in within the NetLogo package. And an agent-based simulation is a computational model for simulating interactions between autonomous agents. So you can see here we have this grid where the cells turn different states depending on what their neighbors are doing or what the rules of the system are. And so we can model some of these scenarios in agent-based models and then get output data to train our model. We also might be interested in building some custom models of cultural evolution. So if you're interested if you have some background in programming and you're interested in cultural evolution, this might be a good thing for you to do. And this is an example maybe of how cultural evolution might work in this system. You have community standards, new ideas, and independent beliefs. These are replicators, so they're injecting new units into the world here, and then they're selected upon by some criterion, and so we can plot these out by sort of their behavioral state space. Finally, if you're interested in this, and this covers a lot of different potential topics, so contact us, contact Jesse Parent or myself. Also, if you're interested in if you can make the deadline, we are supporting a Google Summer of Code project. So this is getting paid for this sort of thing. And so you can find a formal description on Neurostar's GSOC Project 21.1 under the INCF banner. Thank you.